and thanks to all my colleagues for your responses. So, if I heard you correctly, Minister, your father was a guard?
His father.
His father, okay, so that's something we have in common. So, my grandfather was a guard, and he actually married a woman from Drogheda, and they had 9 children, and he lived in the community that he policed. He had his own home, and he was able to send his children to school, and back in those days, some of them actually went to university. They became engineers, teachers, nuns, I think. And my dad then, who was a guard himself, and he, like his grandfather, could live in the community that he served. He had his own home, 5 children, all of whom he put through university. Now, I think this is what Senator McDowell was talking about. He wasn't referring to any kind of a golden age. We all recognise the inequalities, but it was about human capital and social mobility, and that everybody, our parents and our grandparents' generation, they forged a republic where everybody had a stake in that society, and where there was mobility.
My generation is the first in my family to go to university, not my parents.
My parents. Yeah, so I grew up in Finglas.
Yeah.
I was the first person in my family to go to Trinity. Now, I don't consider that I came from a disadvantaged background, but I certainly went to school with boys from a disadvantaged background, and they all went on to become senior guards. I was actually in Vienna this week with a boy I sat next to in school from Finglas, who's one of our senior police officers, who's actually heading up the organised crime and task force on drugs in this republic. And that's because in 1972, when this country hadn't a pot to, I won't complete the sentence, we were building houses. And I remember in 1972 in Finglas, standing at the end of Ballygall Avenue with my sister and seeing prefabricated houses going past in the back of lorries, going to build Finglas South and Finglas West. Not perfect, but from those estates came the boys that I went to school with and the girls that went to school with my sisters, and they went on to make a big contribution to Irish society. I've mentioned my friend, but every professional group, every area of public life is populated by people who had the advantage of a roof over their heads. And I absolutely accept your bona fides and your commitment to ensuring that we rectify this problem. But if you're living in a family hub, or if you're in a hotel, then all that human capital is lost. And I would say that despite the economic indices that many have mentioned here, and it is true, Ireland is transformed through membership of the European Union, through foreign direct investment, Ireland is transformed. But in terms of the social indices, the inequality, the unequal distribution of wealth and advantage has disimproved. Okay, if you let me finish. And we can agree to disagree on this.
Sorry, the opposite.
But I would say to these young people here, I did my Leaving Cert in 1984, like Senator Buttimer. But in 1984, we had ministers who were in their 20s, if I'm correct. I think Mary Harney was appointed as a minister in the 1980s, in her 20s. And, we gave responsibility to young people. In fact, young people forged this very state. They had a citizens' assembly, as Senator Buttimer called for. They assembled outside the GPO, and they took matters into their own hands. And that's what you're going to do. And before long, you're going to be on this side of the glass. And I don't think in decades. And actually, I'm hoping that some of you will keep me on this side of the glass in the next couple of years. Pass the word amongst your Trinity graduates. But sincerely, I've worked with young people. In the Lebanon, in the 90s, we used to take 18-year-old, 19-year-old soldiers, we'd bring them in the armoured convoys, we'd drop them off at the observation post at night. We'd give them a 7.62 machine gun, 2,000 rounds of ammunition. What do you do if you're hit up by Hezbollah? Fire the green flare. What do you do if you're hit up by the Israelis or their proxies? Fire the red flare. Prevent yourself from being forcibly disarmed. We gave them responsibility. We recognised their potential, and they rose to every challenge that they met because we took them seriously. We didn't infantilise them. And there's no point in having free condoms if you don't have somewhere to go, a roof over your head. That's absolutely the case. Now, do I believe that Micheál Martin Leo Varadkar and Eamon Ryan are sincere about rectifying this very, very pressing crisis. I do. On the day of the general election in 2020, when the results came in, the first working day back here in Leinster House, and I'm sure the Taoiseach won't mind me saying this, but he actually invited me in to have a conversation. And he made me a cup of tea, and I felt heard by him. And I was very struck by his speech when he assumed the role of Taoiseach. He talked about his adult children, and he said that they would hold him to account around it. And I was actually very, very struck by that part of his speech. And it did give me hope that he's a sincere person who actually does value young people and does want to, impact on those social indices and rectify them. Do I trust Leo Varadkar? When Owen was in transition years, since we mentioned the whole disability thing, we happened to meet Leo Varadkar, and he met and interacted with Owen on his level. And he listened to Owen, and in fact he said, "You can call me Leo." He said, "The rest of the men here will have to call me Taoiseach." So we'll take him at his word. The same with Mary Lou MacDonald. So collectively, and I do accept the positive, constructive responses that were spoken here, but these are the people who have to hear that narrative. We hear about Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, that you guys will consider us Generation F for failure if we fail to convince them that we're doing our absolute utmost to help you realize your full human potential and your self-actualization. And I think housing is one of the cruelest accommodation, social housing, affordable housing. It is one of the cruelest, most pressing challenges. And the consequences of it will be expressed perhaps by a certain amount of emigration, but the consequences of that will be expressed at the next general election and at the local elections. And we need to be very, very clear in our narrative and our public discourse that we remake and reshape this republic in the image of those who forged it. They were young people, like my grandmother, 19, setting fire to police stations in South County Dublin. If my daughter, who's 18, suggested that she might do that,
I don't think
I'd have a lot to say about that.
I hope you would.
I commend you. Look, I commend you for coming in here. But I can tell you, as a newcomer to this house, I have not met one person, not one person, in this house, in the Shannon or in the Dáil, who isn't, working in utmost good faith to improve the situation and to make this country, as Senator Buttimer says, the best place, not just to live and have an economy, but the best place to live as a citizen in a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.